Hey y'all, welcome back to the Farmer's Table. If you are new here, my name is Jess and I'm so glad you're in my kitchen with me today, where I am dealing with some really huge beets. Now, some of you may live in areas where beets are still growing in your garden. You still may be harvesting them. This is pretty unusual for me in the summer. These were in my high tunnel. They've gotten very large. I typically grow all root vegetables as winter, early spring, and fall crops. Only it gets really hot here in South Carolina where I am. However, with the high tunnel, sometimes things will go a little longer. These have been pressing. I just haven't had a lot of time recently. And I knew I wanted to pickle them, so I wasn't terribly worried about them getting too big. For roasting or eating raw, I almost entirely harvest beets when they're about this big. However, for pickling, I do let them get very large because I just get more volume of food per seed that I'm growing, per plant that I'm growing. And I have found that as long as you get them before they start going to seed or before they split, it's fine. They do completely okay for pickling. Some varieties do better than others. This is called a Cylindra beet. It's an heirloom variety. And I would say that these stay some of the most tender of all of them. But with pickling, we're going to boil them in a brine and then we're going to can them. So that's a lot of cooking. They have a lot of opportunity to soak up that liquid and soften. So the first thing I did was wash these really well. I cut off the ends and the tops because they were all pretty gnarly with lots of little roots and scraggly bits. And now I'm going to peel them. I'm reserving the peels. I've got a little scrap bucket here. All right, I'm gonna peel these and I'll see you here in a few and I'll have stained fingers. All right, I've got everything peeled. I'm about to start cutting them. If you look up pickled beet recipes, you will find so many variations of this. Now, I'm using a mixture of types of beets. Like this is a Chioggia, I said the Cylindra, a golden beet. These are all gonna turn red because these bad boys will dye anything that they touch. If you wanted to kind of try to maintain, if you wanted to do all golden beets and keep them golden, you would want to can those all together. I don't mind it. I don't mind that they all turn red. I think maybe that this adds some diversity to the flavor, but I'm not really sure. This is just how I do it. One of the things that I find terribly inconvenient about preserving fresh garden food is that when you're looking at recipes, it'll say, 10 cups of beets or 4 cups of beets or 3 large beets. Well, I'm not typically trying to make a recipe. I'm typically trying to preserve a harvest, and it's just going to come in whatever measure that it comes in. And unfortunately, a lot of times with the recipes, they'll say something like, oh, it makes about this many jars, but it's not like it's giving me the precise amount to completely nail the exact, 1 canner load of jars. It just never really seems to work out that precisely. So what I like to do is I will look up on the USDA's website. I will look at the ball canning website and I will find the general ratio of the things that matter. This is the size I'm going for. You could go larger. You could do them in discs. I just like to do bite-sized pieces. I'm going to show you at the end of this video a salad that we make with pickled beets, and I like to be able to just open the jar and put them directly on the salad. But I like to look up several recipes and then roundabout figure out what the ratio of the brine is. So when it comes to canning, acidity and sugar levels, all of that really matters as far as safety goes. And according to the USDA website and the ball website, what is typically considered the safe ratio is 2 parts vinegar to 1 part water and 1 part sugar. So the USDA website on their recipe, doesn't really matter how many beets they're putting in. They're putting 4 cups of vinegar, 2 cups of water, 2 cups of sugar. And I can do that and make enough brine to cover however many beets I happen to be canning that day, and I can just multiply it by those ratios, if that makes sense. And that's how I can. I know there are going to be some people that fuss at that and basically say, oh, you should try to very exactly follow it. To me, it's just a common sense thing, and that's typically how I figure out how to safely can things. Now, that said, I've pickled a lot of beets with half and half water and vinegar because someone told me a recipe, I tried it, I liked it, they've been fine. But for the sake of making the video, we'll err even more on the side of caution. I'm kind of in the middle ground when it comes to canning. Like, I like to do things as safely as possible within the confines of common sense, but I definitely don't stress out about it. Because, you know, I figure there are people who have been doing this for a very long time using common sense. And it's a pretty new phenomenon to have such strict rules. I think of them more as common sense guidelines. And according to this guideline, you know, using 2 parts vinegar to 1 part water. I mean, I like strong flavor, and that's just gonna make these a little more potent, and I'm completely okay with that. All right, I'm gonna get back to cutting. All right, here are all my cut beets. Isn't this beautiful? It is kind of a shame that you lose the diversity of all of the color by canning them all together, but I do enjoy it during the process. All right, so I've got my canner on back here. I'm gonna go ahead and get that heating the water in it, because as soon as these are done, I'm gonna put them in jars and can them. So I'm gonna put my brine together here in a pot that's large enough for all of the beets that I'm working on. I have about 12 cups of chopped beets today. So I'm gonna start with doing 4 cups of vinegar, 2 cups of water, and 2 cups of sugar. I use apple cider vinegar for pickled beets. Just make sure that the jug says that it's 5% acidity and you're good. I like apple cider vinegar because I like some kind of spicy notes in these beets, and I add some spices to it. You can season these whichever way you want. You don't have to put any seasoning or spice in it if you don't want to. I actually feel like I need more brine than this. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to go with 2 more cups of vinegar, and then I'll add 1 more cup of water and 1 more cup of sugar. So I'm going to do 6 cups. As long as you maintain that ratio of 2 parts vinegar, 1 part water, 1 part sugar, you'd be fine. And actually, I've been reading multiple places because I was trying to figure out if you could do this without any sugar. I like the sweetness. And since this is not something that I'm ever sitting down like eating a whole jar of, we're usually eating some in a salad or with something, I think it's fine. But I was reading some things that a lot of people are saying really the vinegar is enough to make it safe, and then you don't have to do the sugar, so you could pare back on that. I just use turbinado sugar. Again, I think it goes really well with the ACV and the cinnamon and the stuff that I'm going to put in. Turbinado sugar kind of still has that molasses-y taste to it, but you could do white vinegar here and white sugar if you wanted it a little more simple. All right, now the water. And I'm going to bring this to a boil. All right, so this part is fully optional. You don't have to put these in, but as I mentioned, it does make for a really nice flavor, and I really like it. I'm gonna put like 3 cinnamon sticks in. Not the lid. Some whole cloves. I don't know. Maybe like a couple teaspoons of whole cloves. About a teaspoon of black peppercorns. You can also add finely sliced onions, like a sweet onion, but I usually don't do that. I have, and it's good. I'm going to put 1 thing of star anise in here. This has started to like lightly boil now. The sugar's all melted, so I feel good that it's all distributed. I'm going to go ahead and put my beets in. I really just want to make sure that the beets are covered in the brine so they can cook, and they are. Now I'm going to let this like lightly boil on medium-high heat for like 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. I'm just trying to cook the beets a little bit. They're going to cook further while I'm canning it, but this makes sure that they're soaking the brine in. And while that's happening, I'm going to go ahead and get my jars ready. I just need clean pint jars. I usually do this in pint jars. You could do it in whatever size you think that you will most likely use. For me, we usually open a pint jar, make salads, and depending on how many people we're serving, that can make salads for like guests, or it'll have leftovers for the next day. And actually, I made a delicious beet salad last night. Maya messaged me and asked me if I would throw one together for him. I already have an open jar of beets, and I'm going to show you guys how we put that together. So I just want to make sure that my beets are tender enough to put a fork through them. I don't need them to be super soft, but I don't want them to be super hard either. As I said, they're going to cook a little bit further. Once they're at this point, I go ahead and fill my jars. Well, I wiped all of the rims and put the lids on, but forgot to turn the camera on, so y'all missed that step. I'm going to go ahead and load these in the canner. These are going to process in the canner for 30 minutes, the water bath canner. I'm going to set a timer for this, but I want to show you guys the salad that we love to make. Alright, while we wait for the canner, I'm going to throw together a salad to take out to Maya. He's been working outside. It's very hot, so we're going to do like a nice light salad for lunch using pickled beets from the last batch that I did. Here I've got some toasted pine nuts. These were left over from, we had a dinner date in last night, so I'm going to use those. I've got a couple of pieces of chopped bacon that I had cooked in the fridge. As I mentioned, I kind of like to pickle my beets in the size that I can just open a jar and put them directly on salad. Here I've got a ball of fresh mozzarella I'm just going to tear up and put on here. Now let's make a quick dressing to go on this salad. Olive oil, lemon juice, a little yogurt, a bit of honey, poppy seeds, pinch of salt, and some black pepper. Okay, we'll whip this together until it emulsifies. And then here we dress our salad. This is also really good if you have some fresh oranges or citrus to put in it, but I don't right now, so it'll be fine without it. Timer just went off. It's been 30 minutes. I'm gonna pull these jars out, let them cool here on the counter. Make sure the lids all pop and seal. As you can see, we're all kind of blended together there. As these sit on the counter, they will get more pronounced with the red color throughout all of them. Anytime I pickle anything, I typically like to let it sit for ideally a couple of weeks before I eat them. Obviously, you could eat it right away. It's just the flavors are gonna marry more the more you let it sit. If you did have a failed seal, just stick it in the refrigerator. Once it's open, refrigerate them. They're in vinegar, and that's gonna make them last a long time. That's it. These are our delicious pickled beets. One of my favorite things to make with the food I grow in my garden. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today. God bless you. Until next time.